Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. As you can see, I am on this day joined by a special guest who I will now ask to uh, make a personal introduction. So, special guest, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kat Coffin. I am a fantasy author and scholar of C.S. Lewis, and my debut novel, Hell's Heresies, is coming out on October 8th.
Okay, good to know. We before we started recording, I was maybe discussing the possibility that I could get an art to review because
Sure.
that's kind of my thing. So that really helps me kind of figure out, uh, when I'll post this, when I'll post this interview, and it also might give my subscribers a little sneak peek into what's coming in their future. Anyway, this interview is going to touch on a lot of topics. So before we delve any deeper, I want to know if there is anything you do not want me to talk about, or you don't want to touch upon.
Um, no, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Now, uh, first point of discussion. You mentioned that Hell's Heresies is coming out this October. Is it your? I assume it is your novel writing debut, but is it your writing debut as a whole?
Um, as in like the first novel that I wrote, or like first anything?
I assume it is your first novel. Is that correct?
No, actually, it is my second novel. A lot of writers kind of go through this is they finish their first and it's not quite ready. It's kind of a learning process, so they have to shelve it and then write something better from the lessons that they learned. And that was what was with Hell's Heresies. And my first novel is still shelved. I will return to it someday, but yeah, that it would be technically my second novel is my first debut.
It's your first published novel, would
Yes,
be
my
correct to
first
say.
published novel.
You do have or have other written works on your record, don't you? Want to
Yes,
talk a bit about those?
yes, I do. I do a lot of academic work on the Inklings, so that's C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien, kind of fantasy lit giants. On that vein, I also have written a play about one of the characters from the Chronicles of Narnia, and I have gotten permission from the C.S. Lewis Company and Doug Gresham, who is C.S. Lewis's stepson, to eventually stage it. So, lots of things on the burners.
Yeah, it's good to have a lot of things going on, lots of avenues through which people can get to know you. Uh, Speaking of the play, because I have to say it was I'm not going to say that the play itself was the main avenue through which I got to know you, but more should I say, the reasons behind why it is that you decided to get to work on the play. So if you'd like to go a little bit into those.
Sure. I've always been kind of fascinated by Susan, and she was the character that I related to when I was reading the Chronicles of Narnia. And I um, found myself in my like early 20s, right when I was in college, arguing with a lot of people um, on what her exclusion from the last battle, the final Chronicle of Narnia, what that signified. There's been a lot of very bad faith interpretations on what that reason was. And I think that eventually culminated into me kind of doing something about it and writing my own take on Susan Pevensey. And I did that in 2018 and got permissions in 2019.
Okay, that's that's interesting. Now going back to Hell's Heresies, what is it that inspired you to write about it?
Hell's Heresies takes a lot of beats from Screw Tape Letters, which, that just goes into my C.S. Lewis obsession. But I have been on in a part of different online writing communities for a long time where we would prompt each other different fun prompts. And there was one prompt that a friend gave me involving a ghost writing funny messages on the person that they were haunting's mirror in the morning, but they were annoying messages, like commenting on the person's relationship, or oh, you forgot milk, go and get milk, and stuff like that. And as I was filling that prompt and posting little mini chapters of it, I realized that I had something here, and it just kind of exploded from there and turned into a full novel.
I just kind of realized I actually kind of have a friend whose goal in life would kind of be to be like that annoying ghost, which I'm not gonna lie, kind of makes the situation all the funnier. Um, and you also mentioned that you have a shelved debut. What was that about?
That was a Greek mythology retelling of the Orpheus myth involving a young woman and her mother. I have a very close relationship with my mom, and I wrote it, gosh, 2012, 2013, like very very early writing, and I still love it and I'm very proud of it, but it does need some revamping. And but yeah, someday I'd love to bring that back.
Okay. I think we already heard when it came to when it came time to Hell's Heresy. You first had the main conceit in mind, and then you kind of worked around that. Is that your general process? Are you a character first, world second kind of writer, or is it the other way around?
um Usually character first, I would say. Sometimes a an idea will grab me, which for Hell's Heresies was definitely like that funny concept of a ghost writing messages on a mirror. But ordinarily, I do start off with characters. Hell's Heresies also came originally from fanfic land. So I was using different characters in different fandoms to fill this prompt. And eventually you do that enough, you're kind of like, wait, what if the character was doing this instead? And you make your own characters. So it's a little bit of both, honestly, for Hell's Heresies in that case.
Okay. So, uh, in what role were uh, were these characters? Were they the annoying ghost, or were they the annoyed party?
Both. I would both. I would do different romances for different characters. One character would be the ghost, and one character would be the annoyed homeowner. And yeah, would just play around with that concept a lot.
Okay. Um, Next question. In were there any scenes that you deleted from Hell's Heresies?
Yes. There are that just kind of goes with the whole long boring mechanical process of edits. There are scenes like, oh gosh, there are cut scenes of longer moments between my main character and her family, for instance. And because she's kind of dealing with a haunted house right now, I can't bring too much of extra family. She's got a very interesting backstory, my main character, but we kind of have to focus on the issue at hand and bring in those other interesting characters in future books.
Uh, I now want to switch over to the uh, to the story where you literally have deleted scenes, or would literally have deleted scenes, namely your Susan play. So, do you have any there? Or
No, the Susan play was a much different process than novel writing. Susan play was very smooth when I wrote it, just kind of all the way through. Because it is a one woman play, it's mainly Susan talking and exploring her recollections. I originally had a larger draft with each of the Pevensies speaking to her, as in kind of like a flashback sequence, but it was cleaner to just have it as single Susan and more powerful because Susan is left alone at the Chronicles of Narnia. So I decided to cut other actors portraying the Pevensies because it's Susan's story.
Okay. Uh, Next question. Is there anything you going back to Hell's Heresy? Is there heresies? I should I should actually know I should actually talk about the topic of this video correctly. Um, is there anything that you were initially reluctant to include, but then once it was a part of the story, ended up ended up making you quite pleased with the outcome?
Yeah, yeah. Adding in a priest character and a witch character from two very diametrically opposed worldviews and forcing them to work together and to use their talents and abilities. I wasn't sure how that would play off when I first wrote the very first draft in, I think, 2016. Um, but I've gotten more and more attached to it as I think the main ethic of this whole story is a lot about my spirituality and valuing the power of that and everyone's distinct religious beliefs.
Given, I'm pretty sure the first commandment in the Bible says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And then in other parts of that of the Bible, uh, God describes God describes himself as jealous. So I'm not sure if the inclusion of a priest within a uh, within a setting that would imply to have uh, a vaster pantheon, so to speak. I'm not sure whether or not that counts as heretical. Considering that the Bible actually allows for multiple deities or deity level beings within it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big part of it actually. But I fully I embraced long ago just that I named it Hell's Heresies around the time when I was seeing a lot of other female authors who were writing about spirituality and Christianity and shying away from fundamentalist rhetoric, like Rachel Held Evans or Sarah Bessey. And they still had very pure, beautiful beliefs in God and even in Jesus and Christianity. They just wanted to take the angry rhetoric out of it, but they were still being called heretic a lot. And I thought that was funny that like Sarah Bessey is this wonderful introverted Canadian mom who, is most happy knitting with a cup of tea watching Doctor Who. Like not exactly heretic material, but she gets called it all of the time. And so when I decided to do Hell's Heresies, I was imagining hell as kind of a bureaucratic religious institution that is just coming after anybody who doesn't fall in line. I have a line where my main character, Emery, asks Samael the demon, wait a second, are you saying you invented organized religion? And Samael goes, yeah, the institution of organized religion was one of hell's greatest successes.
Oh, that'll get you some
Yeah.
spicy attention. Let me just say that.
Well, I'm
Then
getting a nice
again,
picture of it
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, true. Even Stephanie freaking Meyer got it. So,
Yeah.
and she is very much a very uh, let's say settled in her ambiance Mormon mom. So and yet the establishment even went after her, or
Yeah.
that particular establishment, went after her. Anyway, moving ahead. is there any aspect of writing that you either dread or rejoice when considering it? So let's start with, so what is it that you, so let's start with the parts of aspect, the parts of writing that uh, that you don't like actually writing, or that you don't actually like working at or delving into. Do you have anything that fits that description?
Um, I don't like the uncertainty of the writing career or of any artistic pursuits. I, although the only thing that really gives me joy day to day is art and music and writing, I'm also very practical minded. So not having a steady paycheck is scary, and just relying on your art to carry you through is a risk, and I don't that I deeply dislike. As for writing itself, not really. I am weaker on like slowing down and letting my characters take a breather. I'm kind of very action oriented sort of writer. I always want to be having something happening. I want the page to be turning. I want people to be invested. Sometimes to my detriment, because characters do need a minute to just be like, "Hup, hup, 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 hup." A lot of stuff happening right now. Let's take a breather and explore each other. Um, but honestly, all of it is like good and bad is exactly what I wanted to be doing my entire life. So warts and all.
Okay. Now, how about the things you particularly like about about writing, about the process, about the industry around it?
Um, I love being able to bring in things that cause me both pain and things that cause me delight in my life into different fictional worlds. I think it's a really powerful way to express that creativity. I also love the collaborative angle of writing, and I think there's an image of a writer that is this like very solitary person, maybe up in the hills on a typewriter, just alone, very Cormac McCarthy esque. But the reality is, at least for every writer who is successfully published, is it is a group project. It's you have other writer friends who are cheering you on, who want to know what's happening in the next chapter, want to see how your novel is going, and like having that support and collaboration. For instance, my cover artist is a phenomenal author herself, and we got to know each other through writing and writing fanfic and doing all sorts of creative things. So just having kind of a village of artists, of writers and poets, being so enthusiastic and supportive for your career and your projects, I think that is one of the best parts of writing.
Okay, that's very interesting. Would it be fair to say that the publishing industry gets Hollywoodified to some extent, as in as in people often think of often actually think of movie guys as well as being these uh, solitary geniuses who bring a creative a creative vision to life, even though making a movie it is infinitely and perhaps more obviously to a higher degree a collaborative effort, because it's not just the work of the director. You also got like tons of tons of photography people, tons of sound people, tons of set designers, and so on and so on. So would you say that something like this is kind of trending towards happening in the uh, uh, publishing industry as well? Not necessarily in terms of ghostwriting, but with stuff like editing and uh, uh, marketing and stuff like that.
Um, well, I am published through an indie publisher, which is City Owl Press. And indie publishing is a little different from mainstream publishing. I am seeing a larger push in publishing for authors to be influencers, as in kind of creating a brand and kind of forcing you to be on social media and make that author presence somewhere, whether it is on TikTok or BookTok or Instagram, Bookstagram or Book Twitter. There's a very deep pressure, I think, for most both indie and mainstream publishers for their authors to have that. And I think there's a split. I'm very comfortable on social media. It makes no never mind to me, but I have other close author friends who deeply resent the idea of having to do social media marketing and of any kind. It's not what they wanted to do. They just want to make creative, amazing fantasy stories. And um, I think that is, I think that pressure is gonna fall back on the publishers if they move too hard. Authors are temperamental creatures.
Yeah, that could be an option. Though that being said, I do have to wonder how many authors will go down the uh Chuck Dingle route. First of all, starting with just like spamming a bunch of short stuff throughout through various means before they move on to like uh more sizable projects.
I think we're going to see a lot of fanfic writers turn published, and I am technically a fanfic writer turned published because I had a lot of fan and do still write a lot of fanfic, and those fanfic communities are just incredible fertile ground for a lot of writers to learn the ropes of basic manuscript building and characterization. And you have no idea the depth of talent that is there. And I believe publishers are starting to take notice of fanfic writers and seeing some potential harvest, to use the metaphor, into the ground.
Okay. I also have some fanfic in my past, but then again, as you said, that's not really that notable. So
Well,
yeah.
I think it's cool though. Like solidarity. All right, I. It's not just my past; it's my present right now.
Oh, that's nice. So you said you're published through through an indie publisher. Was that always what you wanted, or did you target, or were you intending on going independent or with one of the big publishers?
When I started out, we were looking at one of the big publishers. Hell's Heresies is kind of a genre blend. It's a bit romantic, it's a bit paranormal fantasy, it's a bit urban fantasy, it's a big mush of different things and things that are eclectic genres. It's also not YA. It features a woman who's 24 and a new homeowner. So it also is just above the YA that is exploding throughout the market. And I love YA. That's awesome. So we had some struggle placing it, my agent and I, with a one of the big three, simply because right when I signed with my agent was a year before the pandemic, and publishing basically put their shields up and were only picking like surefire things they knew would make them money. Like they were not looking from a business perspective for big risky genre blends like mine. So um eventually we did look at indie, and indie is great. It's one of the best places for neurodivergent or queer folks or POC writers who might not get as good of a shot in mainstream publishing. So my agent and I went the indie route, and City Owl Press is great, and they've given me a lot of creative freedom, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I'm very happily placed there.
Okay. I feel a little bit compelled to also share my history of publishing because I actually started writing my debut in the year before the pandemic. And I started looking not necessarily for publishers, but for agents uh, by the time I finished my first draft. And I sent, I contacted some, sent out some samples of my work, and then I noticed that the answers were either taking too long or coming back negative, and I decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm doing it indie, and I'm just gonna I'm just gonna use. I'm just gonna send it out through a ton of like uh, online stores, web stores, stuff like that. And yeah, that's kind of what I was. That's what I decided would be helpful for me. The extent to which I was successful is something I will not delve into for now. Suffice it to say, it wasn't the runaway success I was low key hoping for.
We're all low key hoping to, supplant J.K. Rowling and all of that. It's a tough business, no matter where you come from it, doing mainstream or doing, I mean, this is why there's so many soapy book scandals on Twitter. Like it's such a tough grind. It's so competitive. It's so there's so much backstabbing a lot, especially in online communities, and so it's rough. I don't blame you, and I the struggle is very very real. It is a tough thing to break into. I started in what 2015, yeah, 2015 with my very first, and just now my my debut is coming out 9 years later.
Okay. Yeah. I started writing when I was 27 with the goal of getting published by the time I was 30. So yeah, uh, uh going independent, so not even small press, full independent was like the was the only option I could find at the time. Moving ahead, I assume there were certain prerequisites or expectations you had in mind when you uh, started out. Did have any of them been proven either true or false when it comes to publishing?
Um, like prerequisite, like what? Like, can you clarify a little?
Uh, the actual question says pre-existing ideas. So
Oh, okay.
basically, preconceptions, prejudices, stuff like that.
Right, right. Okay, gotcha. I expected when I was first querying for agents some requests to turn the manuscript into a YA novel featuring teenagers rather than adults. And I was proven right on that. I got a couple requests for revising that, and I made the concerted effort to say no because I knew this was not a story about teenagers. Which is nothing wrong with a story about teenagers. I was one once. I have many. No, just kidding. I was, but I don't. I am currently not writing a story for teenagers. I am writing a story for young adults in their 20s, and I did get a little bit of pushback from that. I did expect people to ask me to make the romance between my lead character Emery and the demon Samael a little bit more potent or spicy, but because I have other books planned and a very specific idea of what their romance will be, I push back on that a lot, and but otherwise, I I'm neurodivergent and a Virgo. So I did a ton of research on publishing when I first started getting serious about it. So there haven't been a lot of unpleasant surprises or things I didn't expect. I went in with a good baseline knowledge, and I'd recommend anybody who wants to give it a go to do a ton of research and talk to different authors about their querying journeys for agents, what it was like to be on submission when their agents were trying to get to publishers, like all of that. Like really, that is important.
For some reason, I just remembered a Weird Al song about horoscopes. And when it came to Virgos, the first line was like, all Virgos are lists three qualities, among them I don't know, intelligent, charming, and graceful, except for you, who's listening to this song, which I could not help but yeah, I could not help but find funny then, and now that I'm reminded of it, I kind of got a little giggle out of it now. Uh, let's see. I assume your arcs haven't been haven't been sent out yet.
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Very soon.
So I guess I can skip the I can skip the one question I had about those. Um, you already mentioned being close to your mom. I assume she is well aware of your writing endeavors.
Oh yes. Very,
Okay.
very aware.
Do other people know?
Like in my family or
Family, close friends, people who you've met, the people who you've met and come to know outside of the writing activity.
oh yeah, yeah. They everyone unfortunately I am what it says on the tin is everyone knows of my mad writing endeavors. I would even say you could go back as far as to grade school in my hometown and they'd be like, "Oh, Kathleen, she's a published author now." That's squares. Like uh no, not never was a sneaky little surprise like Jane Austen, to her family. It's like, oh, you write novels? No, they all know, and are all very proud and supportive.
The fact that this was a surprise to Jane Austen's family is something I didn't know until now. So thanks for letting me
Oh,
know.
more like she wrote privately to her sisters and like I'm gonna get Jane Austen scholars mad at me. Oh my gosh, I am not a Jane Austen scholar. I'm aware that I think her first novel she published under a male name. I'm just spouting Jane Austen folk things of what I knew. I knew she wrote stories. At first, she only showed her family and no one else. I'll have that as my baseline. Jane Austen scholars, feel free to correct.
If this video actually reaches some Jane Austen scholars who feel, who feel the need to debate that, I'll actually be very happy.
I
You
had
know,
several, and I will defer to them. I won't even. There won't be a debate. I'm a Jane Austen fan. I read a lot of her books, and I have a baseline knowledge of her, but not any kind of expertise.
okay. Has working on the, has working on the release of your of Hell's Heresies in this case, taught you anything you want to do differently with the other books you intend to write moving forward?
Yeah. Well, my next novel is also a big genre blend, and uh, I definitely want to, I guess, use social media a little bit more. I have a bit of more of a platform and an audience nowadays than I did when I first started out, which is great. And I would probably use that a little bit more strategically going forward, especially when pitching and querying for this next novel, which is kind of I call it Mark Twain in Middle Earth. It's a kind of a fantasy Americana folklore story, and it's gonna be it's a weird one. It's just like Hell's Heresies, and it might be pretty hard to place. So banking on social media strategies to get that sold and placed will be great.
Considering that considering that Mark Twain uh, was a staunch Republican liberal, see Connecticut Yankee at the King Arthur's court, uh, setting him in a that is putting him in a setting that is very definitely inspired and inspired and relate and which heavily also relates back to uh, Catholic doctrine being 100% true and accurate will kind of definitely mess with his head.
Yeah, it's that's more of an elevator pitch. I would be more inclined Mark Twain in Middle Earth. It's more of a Mark Twain characters in an Americana high fantasy folklore kind of world, and that takes a lot of beats from tall tales and some of the stories my grandpa told me growing up in the Midwest in mid cornfields, Indiana, and I'm really excited about that book. It's called Nolan Jack. It is finished. It's in edits right now. I have not queried or tried to publish it yet, but that's the next project. That's a sneak peek.
Okay. for some reason I just remembered uh, a story that I think Mark Twain told about his early life. Because everyone knows Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, that kind of stuff. Like even worldwide audiences, somewhat to the detriment of the the other works that he put out. Um, anyway, this one story about his personal life is that uh, at one point his school banned students from bringing in their own like their own knives to school because benches were being carved up, and one of his teachers either saw him with a knife or saw him carving up a bench, and he was like, okay, you either pay $5 or you'll get corporal punishment. So what will it be? He goes on to his dad, tells him what happened, and his dad like, well, okay, I'll give you $5 so you can give it to the school, but I'm also gonna punish you. So yeah, that's what his dad does. And then uh when young Sammy Clemens, as is his birth name, goes to school, he's like, I already got punished once. What's another time? So he took it again, and kept the money. Oh well. Uh, speaking now on this topic in particular, uh, would you consider the process with which you approach writing this next book to different? Or are you going to do you intend to change it in any way?
Um, for that, I say I have a very I have a good writing process that has worked for me for the past 10 years or so. It's how I get a lot of papers and journal articles and manuscripts completed. The for Nolan Jack that is already completed, I may bring in more. I think with the earlier drafts of Hell's Heresies, I didn't have as many people reading over my shoulder as I did it. I think I will have more of my little writing village, my fellow authors, reading different chapters as I go through the editing process and listening harder to their, not taking every suggestion, but just kind of seeing how it reads, if it is cohesive, if it is coming across well. Um, and also because I will have, I think, a lot more diverse readers to which that's pretty important to me, especially neurodiverse and POC authors. So yeah, I would say a little bit different, but I have a pretty good, solid process nowadays, and it's good to, if you know something works, to just keep at it consistently, especially for writing.
Okay. Um, we're almost close to wrapping up here. So, but before I do, I want to know of all the questions uh, I asked you. Is there any you would want me to answer?
Sure. What do you here's my question is, do you think the rise of ebooks and self-publishing is a good thing or a bad thing?
That very much depends uh, on your perspective. If you are to talk about uh, if you were to talk about book writing uh, as a form of expression, and therefore if we are to talk about the increased amounts of opportunities to exercise your own freedom of expression, then I have to say it's basically a good thing, because it means more people have the tools to do so, and and with that brings in uh, certain other changes as well, more insights into specific kinds of expertise, and how those are translated from uh, place to place. and in fact, I can think of quite a few books I've read where the specific insight, the specific professional insight of various authors shines through in the ways they in the ways they present their characters. I don't know ways they present their characters thinking, or in how it is that they describe or flesh out their world. So yeah, there is plenty to there's plenty of noteworthy stuff in that direction. If you are to look at book releases as as an industry, I think it might lead to I think it might lead to the uh, growth of the industry, but it might go from a jungle to a swamp. That the idea being that you will see a large and diverse biome with a lot of different with a lot of different releases, exemplars, and and a uh, and a constantly changing ecosystem, so to speak. But there won't be, however, the amount of uh, runaway successes that would exist, or the opportunity to uh, uh, build upon something that is that is sizable, might might end up vanishing or slowly fading away. As in you won't really see all the kind of uh, publishing landscape where someone like uh, uh, Gaston Leroux, who wrote The Phantom of the Opera without having any, without having any experience as a writer, would be able to, would be able to just come in and write a bestseller. But there would be, there would be a lot of people who, uh, there would be a lot of people who come in and get get some stuff done and do, and then maybe they'll continue, uh, maybe they won't. So in that sense, uh, that it might be more profitable for the industry as a whole. Uh, but I'm not sure to what extent it would be profitable uh, uh, for individual writers. They might see enough to make a living off of that, or they might have to, or, they might have to pull their efforts, and in which case we might end up seeing more, we might end up seeing more small publishing houses, indie publishing houses that are, where where authors use all the expertise that they were uh, forced to acquire as part of as part of the push from the publishing industry as a whole, for them to also brand themselves in order to have uh, pockets of synergistic environments where where they would be able to uh, build upon each other's successes. Right now, the industry is kind of in between it's kind of in between the jungle and the swamp, where publishing is still pushing for for those massive bursts of popularity, to the extent to which some of them are still being uh, manufactured or pushed in that direction, like with stuff like Light Lark or Fourth Wing, or other stuff in that vein that is of and that is very well circulated, but of dubious quality according to a lot of people. Uh, so so yeah, it really depends on whether or not that behavior ends up being uh, I think being rewarded by general audience, whether or not that whether or not that jungle will eventually uh, will eventually uh, maintain itself, but arguably kind of dry out, or whether or not the audiences will seek will seek something else and would instead go for the would delve a little bit into the swamplands for the more for the more obscure stuff that might uh, fit their particular desires a little bit more. No, I have to say, uh, I am I am somewhat skeptical about that about that development from jungle to swamp because uh, I've I've been I've spent some time on Goodreads, which is unfortunately still maybe not unfortunately, but still very popular. And the things I've noticed with people liking the books I don't like is that they tend to like abundance more than they like cohesion, if that makes sense. They're not looking for they're not necessarily looking for a world that fits well. They're not necessarily looking for the uh, uh, they're not necessarily looking for something that uh, uh, that critics would be after. They're just looking for they're just looking for an escape from the mundane, and that escape from the mundane does not have to be internally coherent. Uh, so therefore it is likely that that they would still gravitate towards the few successes the publishing industry keeps trying to prop up rather than seeking out uh, like smaller ecosystems uh, with more with maybe not more specialized but more out of the box and more uh, personalized accounts of fiction and of people relaying their impressions within that within that fictional setting.
That makes a lot of sense. A good metaphor to use, I think.
Thanks, I just made it up.
My best metaphors come from 2 seconds of thought.
Okay. And last but not least, is there any link or platform that you would want to shout out before we close? Or where else can people find you? And is there anyone you would want to you want to talk about, you want people to pay attention to?
Yes, absolutely. I would look at um, I completely blanked out. I was so excited at like, oh my gosh, all the people I love so much. I should just shout out right away. But you can find me most commonly making trouble on Twitter at Cat in Oxford. I by the time this is posted, my website will have been built at www.catcoffin.com. You can find my latest updates, sign up for my newsletter, all that fun jazz. And I would say look at fanfic writers who are looking at publication and support their dreams because I think they're the next wave of really incredible writing.
Okay, good to know. And uh, and yeah, that's been the interview. So thank you very much for participating. And
Yeah,
thank you to everyone who's been patient enough to watch up until this point. Your attention is well noted and appreciated. If you like the interview, then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the discussion we had, the topics we've talked about, or even the offer herself. That's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. Ideally, also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My own books, the first of my own Heir to the Empire series, The Next Generation and the Path Not Taken, are available at various book retailers under their respective master links in the description down below. right past my own social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Additionally, I also have a Patreon where, depending on the level at which you pledge, you'll be able to receive various perks, the specifics of which I'll allow you to figure out for yourselves. I also have a second channel where I talk about things and topics not related to books or literature. So if you want to see that, I'm going to put it in the iCard above. And if you want to keep hearing me talk about books and literature, then there's a whole backlog to this channel that is full of book reviews, writing advice, lore videos, and occasionally even interviews. Or you can do whatever else you want with your day because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it. Until next time, I have been Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.